Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hey everyone, it's Susan Kaufman, and you are listening to Attitude Magazine's ADHD Experts Audio. High school and middle schoolers today are juggling just so much: academic demands, extracurriculars, jobs, social media, and in our case, all while coping with the distractibility and the challenges with focus are the hallmarks of attention and learning differences. So for our students, apps, technologies could make all the difference between success and failure. So we're so pleased today to have Janet DeSenzo. She's an expert in many years duration, I should say, in the field of assistive technologies. And she'll be sharing with us her recommendations for the best apps, tools, and other digital technology solutions to help tweens and teens with ADHD learn best. Some of the things she'll be addressing are what tools and apps do the best job of helping with homework, how to keep your child on task, or how your child can keep him or herself on task while they're working online, how to work with teachers to clarify and track homework assignments. I know this comes up a lot with Attitudes readers, and how to use a number of popular tools to improve time management and organization skills. Janet DeSenzo started working with college students at the university level almost 2 decades ago, and she's been working with students with disabilities ever since. Today, she's an assistive technology specialist and a technology integration expert in New Jersey, where she helps find technology solutions for students with special needs and also assists teachers to integrate technology into their everyday lessons. Janet, thank you so much and welcome to Attitude. We are always extremely grateful to our sponsors. They allow Attitude to present information that we present week after week at absolutely no cost to our listeners. So thank you, sponsors. And our sponsor today is the very interesting Play Attention. It is the only brain training system that combines both neurofeedback, advanced neurofeedback, and cognitive training, two very separate functions in one online system to effectively improve attention, behavior, and learning skills in both children and adults with ADHD. So for more information about Play Attention, please visit their website, www.playattention.com. So with that, let me turn it over to Janet, and thank you again.
Well, it's really nice to be here. First things first, I just want to explain that what we're going to be talking about today are just a sampling of technology tools that are out there. There's just so much available that we could really never cover it in a 30 to 40 minute time span. So I've just taken samples, different types of technologies that we can go over. Please don't think it's the be all end all, because there's so much more out there. I just want to give you a kind of a smattering of what's available. So what I'm going to be highlighting today are different specific technology tools such as apps, but we're also going to be looking at devices that those applications are available on. I'm also going to be looking at websites that are available across devices. In addition to that, we're going to be talking about some strategies that affect your organizational skills, tools that we can use throughout the lifespan, not just as students in school and in college, and also recommendations for use. And as always, we need to keep in mind that there is no silver bullet. There is no be-all, end-all magic pill that is going to make everything perfect and you know, our focus issues are going to go away. So with that being said, I want to start out a little bit to discuss what we mean by the term assistive technology. So as far as assistive technology goes, and the terminology, I know this sounds kind of clinical and very academic, but the term itself, assistive technology, could mean any type of device that assists a student with their functional capabilities, their day-to-day functional capabilities. I want to clarify that even though we're usually talking about something technology-based, it doesn't necessarily mean that this has to be an electronic device. A chair with arms can be included in the assistive technology term in an IEP or in a 504 plan. So don't always think of assistive technology as something that has to be plugged in or turned on. It could be anything that helps with your day-to-day capabilities and functioning in class or in an academic setting. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of digital devices, meaning computers or tablets in school. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk about limiting screen time and making sure that our students are not spending the day on their phone or on their tablet. And I completely agree with that. But one of the things that I think we need to keep in mind is, as well as the cons and they're kind of isolating themselves and making sure that we're not losing these devices, is that we need to teach our students appropriate use of devices, because these tools are really what can be a huge benefit for someone with organizational or focus issues. It could be cons or benefits, or they could be disadvantages. So what we really need to think about is how to limit the screen time, but yet increase productivity. So in thinking about our children and using devices, we have to think about what can they handle. Are there too many distractions on that device? Are we using it for gaming apps? Are we using it just to get on the internet and look at YouTube videos? Are we looking at devices that are way too expensive for our children? I would not be putting a very expensive smartphone into the hands of a fifth grader. I don't think that's practical. And we all know that, things tend to get lost. So we have to think about what our students can be responsible for. But on the other side of that coin, you have to think about the benefits of a device. One of the things that I remember distinctly as my son was going through school is the binders with the zippers on them. And I know that a lot of our students are walking around with these binders with the folders in them. And a teacher may say, here's the handout for today. Don't lose it. You need to study for the test on Friday. I'm giving it to you today. Maybe it's Tuesday. And we expect that very disorganized student to keep track of where that paperwork is for the rest of the week. When you're using a device, everything is in one place. We're not leaving a packet or a handout in a locker or on the bus or at home on the table. All of your information and tools are in one place. The other benefit is many of the tools that I'm going to talk about today are cloud-based. So that means that the information that we're using that tablet or device for can be used across devices. It's what we call device agnostic. So if I save something on my tablet, when I turn my computer on later on, it'll still be accessible because it's all web-based information. I want to also highlight that screen time can be limited with certain tools. There are tools that will allow you to lock your device into certain websites or put timers on the screen. So I'm going to be touching on a few of those. And the last thing is that paper is only good if you take it out and look at it. So we have a lot of students that are using paper planners in school, which are great, but if that student doesn't take that out and it's not in front of them, they're not going to remember that in 2 days they have a long-term project due. So when it comes to devices, you can set notifications, you can set auditory reminders, bells, ringers, vibrate settings. So all of those things can kind of help you to stay on task. So as far as choosing the best device, I really don't want to get into this too much. There are too many devices out there to discuss. That's a whole different webinar. So, but we have to think about, again, those devices that a student can handle. Are we expecting them to walk around with a PC laptop? Are we expecting them to walk around with a tablet, a smartphone? What can they handle? Also, what can be supported in the school setting? What are teachers already using in the school? What have they already been trained to use? So if we're talking about, a school district that is all iPads, is it the best thing to give that student a Chromebook? So we really have to work together with the schools when it comes to best choices for our students. Again, are we using devices that are using web-based tools that are device agnostic? So we have to think about things like Google Apps. We have to think about apps that run across devices, websites, things like that. So one of the things that I think is really important that's happening in school districts today is finding out whether or not your school district is using what's called an LMS, or a learning management system. Teachers who know how to use learning management systems are doing it's a huge benefit for our students. So even when we're talking about students that don't have special needs, all of the information for their classes, curriculum-based information, online textbooks, handouts, packets, homework assignments, everything basically is online in this learning management system. So you may have heard of websites such as Edmodo or Canvas, or in our district, we use a tool that we've just started using this year, and it's taking a little while for our teachers to get used to it, but basically it's putting all of your classroom materials online. It's basically your class online. So for students who have attention issues or focus issues, this could be hugely beneficial because they know that everything is in one place. If they lose that handout, they know they can go online to that LMS and use that tool and find that information. So I highly would recommend that you find out if your school is doing this, if they're using an LMS, or even if their teachers have set up their own classroom websites. It's worth asking. So let's start to talk about tools a little bit. When it comes to tools, I think probably one of the most important tools to teach a student to use is a calendar or a planner. I've been to many different districts where the first week of school, every student is handed a paper planner, and they are taught how to go to find today's date and put in the subject, what their homework is, and write it down. And I think that is a great skill to learn. I think that as students get into middle school and high school and even college, most likely they're not walking around with paper planners anymore. They're walking around with smartphones. So I think it's really important to start with the basics, start with your paper planners, but then kind of transition over when it comes to your tween and your teen into helping them to utilize their smartphone the best they can. Most devices, depending upon the operating system, have a built-in calendar. I know that on our Chromebooks in our district that we're using, everybody has access to a Google Calendar. If you're using an iPad or an iMac, you have access to iCalendar. And those things will sync across devices as long as you're logged in using your iTunes account or using your Google account. Whatever other device that you can get on to access iCalendar, all that information will sync across your devices. The other reason I brought up an LMS earlier is because if your district is using an LMS, usually there is a calendar that is built into that online tool, so that if your science, social studies, history, and math teachers are all posting to the same LMS tool, all of those assignments will be on one calendar available on that website. So it's really beneficial for your students to learn how to use those tools well. Again, those built-in calendars usually have auditory reminders or notifications so that if there's a due date coming up at that time, they'll get a ding or a vibrate or some type of visual notification that will remind them that something is coming up. So that's first and foremost. I think students really need to learn how to use calendars well. For some students, calendar is a bit overkill. If they're not wanting to use a calendar, then I would recommend that they use what's called a task manager or a reminder tool. So if we're just looking for something that will allow them to write down their homework each night, instead of making a note called homework, they can keep a checklist that will allow them to check things off as they get them done. So I wanted to give you 3 different examples of a task manager or a reminder tool. The one that I tend to use the most is something called Google Keep. Google Keep is a free tool. It's an app through Google that will be available as long as you have a Gmail account, or if your school is a Google Apps for Education school, you'll have this available to you as well. Google Keep not only lets you make lists and notes, but it will allow you to set reminders. Down here at the bottom of the screen, there are some tools here, and the little finger with the string around it is the reminder tool. so that you can set it to have a pop-up or a ring at a specific time. You can also color code your notes. I'm a huge advocate for students color coding things so that everything related to a certain subject is a specific color. So your notes, everything that might be red might be math, and everything that might be English could be green, so that they can keep track of what notes mean what. You can also share these notes with others. You can collaborate with others. So if a teacher wanted to use Google Keep and share a note with her students, she could. She could also share pictures, add pictures to these notes. Again, you'll see down at the bottom of the screen there is a picture tool here, and you can arrange your notes in tile view or in list view. One of the disadvantages to this type of note tool is that you can't really sort these notes in any way. There's no sorting option. So there are pros and cons to different tools. Again, you have to figure out which one works best for you. So this is the first of 3 options for reminders. The second one that I wanted to share was one that was built into everyone's iOS device. So if you are using an iOS device, such as an iPhone or an iPad or an iPod, you can use the built-in Reminder app. And this is a little sampling of what the Reminder app looks like. You could make different lists in your Reminder app. So according to categories, so you could have a school category. You'll see here I've made one called basketball, in case if you're on a basketball team and you need to remember certain equipment or dates. I also made a tutoring list. So you can add different lists here, and all of the reminders will show up by date. The other nice thing that I like about this is that you could not only insert pictures, but you can put in drawings. So if you wanted to write a quick note, handwrite it, you can write that on your tablet and it can be inserted into one of your reminders. And as I mentioned before, this will sync between Apple devices via iCloud. As long as you're logged into iCloud, it will show up on all your different iOS devices. And the third option that I wanted to show you is one that is not related at all to Google. So if you have a Chromebook or if you're using an iPhone, there are also other options that are web-based and are free. So many are out there. But this happens to be one called Remember the Milk. And it looks very similar to the iOS Reminder app in that you can create different lists. You can sort by days, weeks, and then you can also add in checklists. So this is a really neat tool. Again, it's free. It's called Remember the Milk, and it also sends email reminders when you have something coming up that you need to remember. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is something called Google Apps. Many school districts in the U.S. are moving towards becoming Google Apps for Education districts. And I wanted to explain a little bit what that is if you're not familiar with it. If you are familiar with it, I'll just ask you to bear with me for a minute because I think there are many beneficial tools that are built into the Google Chrome browser that students and adults can benefit from. So I'm just going to explain very quickly what it is. Google Apps is a suite of apps that comes built into the Chrome browser. So as an individual or as an adult, if you have a Gmail account, you have access to all of these tools, and you might not even know about it. So as you'll see over here on the left-hand side, these are the apps that are native to Google. They are very similar in nature to the Microsoft app. So if you're familiar with Microsoft Office and that's what you've been using all along, there are apps that are very similar to each one of the Office tools. So in other words, if you're used to using Microsoft Outlook, we use Gmail and Google. If you're used to using PowerPoint, Google uses something called Google Slides. If you're used to using Excel, we use Google Sheets. And the beauty of this is whenever you use one of these tools, it's saved by default to Google Drive, which is cloud-based. So let me just explain. Cloud-based means that this is saved on servers outside of your device, meaning that if something happened to your computer, or if it crashed, or if you left your device in school, or if you left it at home, or if your battery dies, you can still get to all of these tools on any other device using the Chrome browser or these apps on a tablet. So again, it is device agnostic. The other nice thing is there are a ton of different third-party apps that you could use through the Chrome browser, loading these apps through Chrome, and it basically keeps your information in one place and allowing you to access it on multiple devices. So I'm going to give you examples of what that is in a minute. These are just a few of some of the apps, the third-party apps that are pretty common. The other thing, in addition to apps that are installed, are something called extensions. So you'll see here I have an example of what the Chrome browser looks like. You'll see that, this is your URL box, and here's some tabs that I might have open. But in addition to that, there are these little icons here that are next to our browser box. And these little apps are little mini programs called extensions that work along with whatever website you have open. So, for example, this little red couch here is an extension called Readability, and it's a great extension. It's a great tool for folks who are easily distracted by too much information being on the screen. So let's say you are looking up an article to do research on, and that article has all types of ads on the right and left column. They have different pictures blinking. They have things that are meant to catch your attention. While you're on that website, if you were to click this little red couch and initiate the readability tool, what it does is it takes that website and it strips out all of those distractions, and it opens it in a new window with only the article showing. So it's very, very helpful for people who are kind of caught off guard and your attention pulled away from what you're supposed to be doing, which is focusing on the article you should be reading. So I highly recommend that tool. There's another tool here, an extension that's free. It's called Speak It. And for folks who, again, have trouble focusing on reading silently, this will help you to read that article aloud. So any text that you can select in a website, Speak It will read it aloud. So it's a text-to-speech tool. Another one that I think is really valuable is the timer. So if you're really trying to self-discipline yourself and stay focused for a certain amount of time, you can turn this timer extension on, and it will allow you to set it for any amount of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you'll see a little box that pops up underneath the clock here that shows you how much time is left for you to stay focused on your task. So that could be very helpful for someone who's trying to limit themselves and stay focused for a specific amount of time. And another extension that I have here is something called Strict Workflow. It's a focus tool that I'm going to show you how that works in a minute. But basically what it does is it locks you out of certain websites so that it forces you to stay on task, again, as long as you're using the Chrome web browser. So these little extensions can be very, very helpful as far as improving or increasing your productivity. And as long as you don't mind using the Chrome browser, I think they could be a huge help. So for those of you who are Mac people and you use the Safari browser, or if you're a Microsoft person and you're using Internet Explorer, you might want to think about adding the Chrome browser to your device because otherwise you will not have access to these tools. The other thing that I just wanted to mention about extensions in your Chrome browser is that if you're using Chrome on a tablet, these will not be available to you. They're only available if you are using the desktop version of Chrome. They are not available on the mobile version of Chrome. So you might ask, well, great that I showed you all these apps and these wonderful extensions, but how do you get them? And basically, they are downloadable through what's called the Chrome Web Store. So if you were to go to apps.google.com and go into your list of apps here, everybody should have access to the shopping bag icon, which is the web store. And if you go into the web store and you search for something like readability, or if you search for something like timer, it will show you the available apps and the available extensions. Okay, so as I mentioned before, there are a few Chrome extensions that will help you to stay on task. And this is really, really beneficial for students who are using Chromebooks. For those of you who aren't familiar with Chromebooks, Chromebooks are laptops that only run the Chrome operating system, meaning you cannot install additional software onto them and you cannot use any other browser besides Chrome. You don't have access to Mozilla Firefox, you don't have access to Safari, Internet Explorer, you're only using the Chrome browser. So for those students who you're really trying to help to stay on task, these tools are extensions that get loaded into the browser tool. And what they do basically is they allow you to lock yourself out of or into certain websites. So let's say, for example, your student is trying to work on a research paper and they're trying to stay focused, but I just need to quickly check my Twitter or quickly check my Instagram. These tools will allow you to blacklist certain websites that you do not have access to for a certain specific amount of time. So, for example, my favorite that I use is called Strict Workflow. That's this one here on the bottom of your screen. And what that does is it gives you a box where you can list certain websites. It comes preloaded with certain websites like Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and other websites that are commonly seen as huge distractions. And it forces you to lock those websites out for 25 minutes. Now you can change that amount of time, but that 25 minutes is really based on something called the Pomodoro technique. And the Pomodoro technique recommends that a 25-minute amount of time is perfect for staying focused. And then after that 25 minutes is up, it releases those websites and it shows you a little announcement that says your time is up, now take a 5-minute break. But if you do try to go to those websites while you have a tab open and the timer is counting down, it will say, get back to work, stay focused, this website is blocked. So it could really be helpful even for adults to use. For students, this one called Forest is a little bit more gamified. It allows you it creates a forest for you. And every time you are successful in staying focused and not being distracted by other websites, it allows you to plant another tree in your forest. So it gamifies the focusing efforts while you're online and working. Stay Focused is another one that's got a lot more features that allows you to blacklist and whitelist certain websites. So that one you could really tailor to, okay, only allow me on these websites for this amount of time. So it's got a lot more features built into it. But these are great, great tools. In addition to these tools, one of the things that I would always recommend is if you do have a child that's got multiple devices, so let's say your student is working on a research paper or working on a certain homework assignment on their computer, and they happen to have a phone, I always recommend to take that phone and put it in another room, because if it's dinging or vibrating or putting up notifications, it's very hard for a child or a student to not look at that phone. The temptation is too great. So when it's time to work, take away all the other distractions, use your work locks here in Chrome, but also take that phone and put it in another room. This is an example of what the Strict Workflow extension looks like in the options area. So you'll notice that here you can block any of these sites. You can add sites to this. You can take sites off, and you can change the amount of time here. that you need to be focused. So if you think 25 minutes is too long for your student, which I think that 25 minutes is a little bit too long for your typical 5th or 6th grader, maybe you want them to work without stopping for 15 minutes or for 10 minutes. You can change that time. You can also choose whether or not you want to show a notification when the timer finishes. This is something you really need to think about, because if your child is on a roll and they're working hard and their time is up, you don't want them to stop working just because it's time for a break. You want them to keep on moving and keep on staying focused until they need a break. But this will lock them for that amount of time. Okay, so I also want to talk about some other productivity tools that will help your students get it done faster. I remember when my son was in school and we were really struggling with ADHD, he just wanted to get things done. And I would say, you sure you don't want to look over it again? It's done. I don't want to look at it anymore. It's done. So we needed to find ways to get things done well the first time and not have to go back and recheck. And one of the things that I think that could be very beneficial for some students, not all, because this is, again, it's not the silver bullet, and some kids cannot handle using voice recognition, but some kids can. And I've seen this work very successfully with certain students. And this is called voice typing. Now, in the past, we've had to buy separate software to install on your computer that will allow you to do voice recognition, and it involved a lot of training and teaching the software, if you will, how you speak and how your voice, how you talk, basically, for it to be accurate. Google has taken this technology and really improved upon it, and they've built it into their Google Docs tool. So if you have a child that needs to write a paper or write an essay or even a paragraph, and you know that they have great expressive language skills, but not very good typing skills, and we have some kids who are very frustrated by keyboarding, this may be something to look into. If you were to open a Google Doc and go to the Tools pull-down menu and activate voice typing, it basically turns on the microphone on your computer. It asks you to, can I have permission to use your microphone? And you have to click allow. But after that, once you start speaking, it starts to type out everything that you say. It's highly accurate for a technology that doesn't require any kind of voice training. So if you have a child who is very frustrated by keyboarding and could think and speak much faster than they can type, this might be a great way to help them to get their thoughts out. One thing I will say, though, is that they do need to go back and proofread what they've written, because it's not 100% accurate, and it's not for every student. I like to combine this tool with the Speak It tool, so that once the student has spoken out their sentences and they think everything is done, they should proofread it by listening to it, and then they can catch a lot more mistakes once they think they're finished with their final proofreading. So voice typing, great tool in Google. Okay, another set of tools that can help students with organization issues is something called an online note-taking tool. We've got a lot of students out there with different notebooks for every subject. Sometimes they remember that notebook in a certain class. Sometimes they leave it in their locker. Sometimes they leave it home when they need it. And some students just can't handle having to shuffle through different notebooks in different folders. These tools, again, are device agnostic. They're available on just about any platform. So any smartphone, any tablet, any computer will allow you to either create an Evernote account or a OneNote account. So let me just explain what these are. These are online notebooks that allow you to create an account for free and create notebooks with different subjects, and then add notes to those notebooks. And it automatically will date your notes. It will allow you to add sound recordings. It will allow you to add pictures, PDF files, and clip things from the internet. So everything is available, again, in one place. It doesn't get lost. If you have a notebook for 4 months, let's say a paper notebook, and then all of a sudden you lose it, well, there goes all your notes for the year. This will keep them all in one place. And on top of that, I've seen a lot of students who are very frustrated with the fact that they can't read their own handwriting. They're writing so quickly, and when they go back to read their notes, they can't understand what they've written. So in this case, everything is typed. So Evernote and OneNote, great tools. They will both allow you to do multiple notes for free per day. Evernote does have a maximum, but I have yet to fill that up each month. It gives you a certain max amount of storage or memory per month, but I don't know any student who's filled that up yet, unless they're using a lot of pictures. One thing I'll say about OneNote that I noticed is very recently they've added the text-to-speech tool built into OneNote. So if you want to proofread or listen to any notes read back to you, OneNote has that built in now. The other benefit to this is these also have sharing tools built into them. So there are some teachers who are creating either a OneNote account or an Evernote account, and they're sharing notebooks between students or just from the teacher to the student. So that's a huge benefit too in a school district. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an example of what Evernote looks like if you were to look at it on a computer. I also use Evernote extensively on my iPad. But if I have meetings that I need to go to, every time I have a new meeting, I will open up a new note. And again, it is going to be saved under this notebook. If I have different tools that I'm looking at, Web 2.0 tools that I want to learn about, and let's say I learned about it at a conference, I make a new note under that topic and I add it to that notebook. I can sort in any way, shape, or form. I can sort these notebooks by date. I could sort my notes by date. I can sort them alphabetically. If I know that I took notes on a certain topic, but I can't remember what I called that note, I can search for that note here using the search tool. So it's very highly customizable, and it's great for students who don't always title or date their notes properly or can't find their notebooks. So online note-taking tools. The last thing that I just want to go over, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this talk, was that assistive technology doesn't always mean a device that gets turned on, plugged in, or that's electronic. An assistive technology tool can be an environmental learning support. So if you have a child who just can't sit still, I remember a child once telling me that it's hard for me to pay attention in class because the only focusing that I can do is how much longer do I have to sit still in this chair? And that's kind of, it's not beneficial to the learning process at all. So one of the things that we're looking at more and more in school are how is the learning environment set up? Is it practical to think that this student or students that are hyperactive can sit in a chair for 40 minutes at a time and try and pay attention? So we are seeing more and more things like standing desks where students are allowed to stand up and take notes. They look like high top tables, or pedal desks where the students are constantly allowed to move their feet and pedal. We're seeing teachers putting large rubber bands between the two front legs of a chair so that they can bounce their feet on that rubber band or sit on what I call a wiggle wedge, which is kind of an inflatable pillow that they sit on and allows them to wiggle. And then finally, they have ball seats, which are helping students with self-regulation. Again, if they have to keep moving or they're having trouble sitting still, this allows the student to use their core muscles and again keep moving and while still maintaining some type of physical action that it can help them to stay focused or on task. So for those students who are having trouble sitting still or are having trouble just trying to stay in a chair for the entire class period and not be distracted by having to get up and walk around and take breaks and distract other kids, maybe it's impractical to expect them to stay sitting in that chair. Maybe we need to allow them to move around a little bit more. So keep in mind, these may be good choices for students. I know that for a traditional classroom, some teachers think that this becomes more of a distraction, but if it can help a student stay focused and on task, then I think that a little bit more we need to start looking at these in our traditional classrooms.
That was just terrific. Thank you so much. I mean, I think all of us know that Google Apps have a lot to offer, and I think pretty much everybody could benefit from what you described. And the fact that it's all available for free is just really terrific. Yeah. There's one difficult question that's being posted here by 2 or 3 or 4 people, and that involves, one person describes as a stubborn or reluctant teen, and another person describes as a teen who that we're assuming a willing participant. Mm-hmm. So I guess the 2 questions are different. One is, how do you persuade a child to try some of these items? And then another one is, how do you deal with children who just will block anything that you do to try to keep them off social media or off, gaming or whatever you're trying to use a blocker for? I guess, how do you get buy-in?
Yeah. It's really hard to do. There's a couple of different options, and I've actually watched quite a few webinars on this. I have one of those teens myself who's no longer a teen. But yeah, you really have to put in some kind of schedule together that, the gaming doesn't start until the homework gets done. It's so much easier said than done. I know that. But I've worked with parents to set up their computers in the home so that, let's say you have three children and you have one computer that they all have to share. What I would do is every child has their own login on that computer. And once they log in, there are no browsers available. And this involves some techie skills on the parents' part, but I would delete the other browsers or hide them, no more Internet Explorer, no more Mozilla Firefox, and have them use the Chrome browser and have them use those blocks. Are they going to be resistant? Yes, but these are skills that we have to try and give our students and help them to learn how to be a little bit self-disciplined. And again, I know that's easier said than done, but if we can stay focused for 20 minutes and get the essay done, then you have 5 minutes or a 10-minute break where you can go on your Facebook or check your Instagram or go on Snapchat and do your thing. But it is really hard. I have another child who likes to sleep with the cell phone charging in their bed, and it's it's something that we have to start trying to encourage our kids to have good habits, good digital habits, and there's a time and a place for everything. And I know that students are resistant, but again, there are devices that work better than others. For example, if I see more and more parents purchasing Chromebooks for their kids as opposed to laptops. And when it comes to Chromebooks, you log into a Chromebook with your Google account, and if Chrome is the only browser available, then it's a lot easier to use those device locks like the strict workflow extension that I mentioned before. So it's something to think about when you're choosing devices for your kids.
Okay. Someone asked whether the Chrome extensions are available if you don't have a Chrome notebook, and I believe the answer is yes, right?
Yes. So if you have a PC, laptop, a Windows-based machine, or if you're using a Mac-based computer, all of those tools are available through the Chrome browser. So if you don't have Chrome installed on your laptop, you'll want to download Chrome, install it, and then you'd have to log into Chrome, and then you'd have those extensions available to you.
Okay. Yeah, that's, in the workplace we use Google, tools all the time, and it never had occurred to me how useful these would be from school. Yep. What's your thought on the smart pen? Asks someone. That's interesting.
I love smart pens. The smart, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's like a live scribe pen?
Right, I think that's what she means. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I use live scribe pens myself professionally. If I know that I'm in a workshop where there's going to be a discussion and I'm not going to be able to write fast enough, I love live scribe pens, especially for students who again have handwriting difficulties, because you could basically, for those of you who aren't familiar with a smart pen allows you to write and record at the same time. So if someone is speaking while I'm writing, there's a little camera in the bottom of the pen, so I can go back to my notes later on and touch the ink of a note and listen to what was being said as I wrote that note. So I think they're great. I think they're great for students who are easily distracted, again, or have handwriting issues, because I don't need to write complete sentences or write, if you will, legible notes. I could make a star while the person is talking and maybe put a keyword next to that star and then go back to it and listen to that lecture. There are two downsides to smart pens. Well, there's really three that I'll say. Number one, they're easily lost and they're not cheap. So, smart pens, we have to have someone who is, responsible enough to keep that smart pen in a safe place and make sure that you have enough note paper, because it doesn't use regular paper. You need special paper to take those notes on. The second downside of that is there are some teachers who are very uncomfortable with being recorded in the classroom. And I think it's important for the teacher to know. I don't recommend going into a classroom with a smart pen and not telling the teacher that you're using it. I think there are strategies that could be put into place where when a teacher is ready to be recorded, they either point to the student and allow them to use whatever recording device they're using. But people should know when they're being recorded. I believe that, and I think that's common courtesy. I also think that students should know that they're being recorded. So if I raise my hand and ask a question in class, I should know that somebody might be recording me. And then the last point that I'll make about those pens is if you're going to use them, as I mentioned before, where you're making an asterisk or you're making a star, those notes are only beneficial if you go back and listen to that recording. So, you have to have a student who is motivated and disciplined enough to know that they're going to go back and listen to those recordings. But if you do have a student who would do that, I think live scribe pens or smart pens are great. They definitely have a place for students with attention issues.
Okay, great. A number of people have brought up the idea that electronically their children can save notes and so forth, but then they never go back to look at them. So,
right.
That problem, remains. It's still the motivation issue and the organization issue probably still remains a factor. Any thoughts on that? I guess scheduling is one of the things that you recommend, which makes sense.
Yeah, scheduling is so important, and it's one of the hardest things to follow through on is, our schedules are so different from day to day. We've got kids with rehearsals and practices, and we're driving them around everywhere. But it's at some point we have to make sure that their work time or their homework or study time is going to have its own routine to it, where they're either going to go back and look at their notes, they're going to log into their LMS or their teacher's website and look at their homework. But all of those pieces need to be covered during homework time, and we need to make sure that they're making that time if we expect them to be successful.
Right. Some questions about school. Well, I think some from teachers. What's the best way for school to teach and reinforce good digital habits? Asks one participant. Interesting question. Yeah,
that's. If I knew the answer to that, I'd have $1 million. It's very interesting when I visit different districts and I go from school to school. There are some schools who are really going full speed ahead with their STEAM programs and their computer programs. And then there are other schools who are doing away with their computer teachers in their libraries. So budgets all, withstanding, I think that the new technology standards are really trying to get schools to focus on these are skills that must be taught. We need to teach good digital citizenship skills. And kids need to understand that they're not to take recordings of other people and put them up on YouTube and make fun of people. Like there are citizenship skills and things that need to be understood. How do we do that as a school? I think that it involves good, strong administration who understand the pros and the cons to bringing digital tools into school. I think that to allow students to bring in their own devices or use any device, even if it's handed to them by the school, without teaching them good digital citizenship skills is kind of irresponsible. We really need to do that. And I think that if I was a teacher, and one of the things that we do in our district is we do that. We hand them a device and we say, these are the expectations for this device, and they are asked to sign an agreement where they understand that this is what's okay and this is what's not okay. I think that as a school district, you really need to look at how you are fostering good digital citizenship skills.
It's interesting that that's coming up a lot now in the context. People are saying, how can I cut down on my child's screen time? And the response is increasingly from our experts, think about the whole digital picture of how your child behaves online, not just one aspect of it. So that's interesting. Right. Sort of a digital, courtesy lesson. Some specific questions about specific needs. Do you recommend a tool for recording classroom discussions? And is there any way to download those into online to study for study purposes?
I tend not to. I don't, and here's why. You have a child with focus issues and issues staying seated, and for them to record a 30-minute class and to go back and expect to think that they're going to sit and listen to that 30-minute class again, I think is unrealistic, and it doesn't happen often in my experience. I think that's where the LiveScribe pen comes into play, and tools like your Evernote tool or your OneNote tool, because they do allow you to record a bit of information and then to stop. I don't think it's realistic to record an entire class. I never
stay recorded, right?
Right. When you do record bits and pieces of a class, if you know that a teacher is teaching a new concept and I really need to learn this and understand it, most devices come with built-in microphones, tablets, laptops, Chromebooks, and those microphones, surprisingly pick up really well. So as long as the teacher is okay with being recorded, if you can record that bit of information, that sound note becomes part of the note that you're taking. So, if I know that on Monday I took this note, I can go back to Monday's notes and see that bit of recorded information built right into that note.
Right.
So that's how it stays organized.
An interesting question from someone who asked whether you have any suggestions for apps for daily living, sort of staying on track with just the regular daily life, getting out the door, getting home on time. All that sort of larger issue about the structure of the day. Right.
I think that's where the reminder apps come in. I really like the iOS reminder app because you can set it for certain things at different times. Look, I know that if I have to bring something to work tomorrow, I'm not going to remember it at 7:00 at night while I'm, trying to finish my laundry and check the homework. I have to set a reminder that I know is going to go off right before I go to bed, or, for whatever, to take medication or pack a notebook or whatever. So I know if that timer, that notification goes off at 10:00, I'm going to go and check and see why I got a ding on my phone.
Okay, yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I like those reminder apps for that purpose. You can use a calendar, but then your calendar is filled up with little minutia kind of stuff where
brush your teeth, whatever. Yeah.
Right. And those reminders can be set to repeat too. So
exactly.
It's cool with a repeat.
Question from someone about spelling. Do you know any good applications for correcting spelling? I have a horrible speller. This is about her child.
I do. I have two recommendations. Number one, try voice typing because it always spells your words correctly. And it will take grammar into effect. So if you're going to say they're going to the store, it's going to use the right version of there. So that's one. If voice typing doesn't work for you, then there are two tools out there. One is called Grammarly. It works great with web-based tools. And there's also another one called Ginger. And Ginger, again, is an extension. You can even add Ginger to Microsoft Word if you're a Word user, and it will check your grammar and spelling, even better than the built-in spellers.
Wow, that's great. That's terrific. A couple of people have kids who like to listen to music while they're doing homework, and they sort of want your point of view about that. And also, is there any way to monitor it? So Angela has a child who supposedly is listening to classical music, but she's switching it to rock and roll within 5 minutes. So
we all have those kids, yeah.
Right.
Here's how you gauge it. You gauge their productivity.
Okay.
If they're getting their work done and it's helping, then I would say let them use it. If they're not, we have a lot of kids who need that background white noise happening. And I cannot listen to anything with lyrics. So when I know I need to get work done, I either put on classical music or classical piano because I know that white noise is, as long as that music plays, I know that that's the time when I need to stay focused. If your kids can be as productive with different types of music, then let them. If they're not, and they're constantly looking for new songs or thumbing up or thumbing down, then maybe... that's not for them. So every kid's different. There's nothing across the board that says, rock and roll music is going to interfere with their productivity. But it depends. I have a daughter who sits in front of the television and does her work. I could never do that. Never do that. I need my own filters.
It's amazing. Yeah.
What I will say, though, is for those kids who are easily distracted by everything that goes on in a room, is even if there's no music on and they have to focus on either writing a paper or studying, put some headphones on to keep out all the other things that are going on in a room, because it kind of closes them in and keeps all of their senses focused on whatever's right in front of them.
That makes sense. Right. Okay, well, there's so many more interesting questions, Janet. This was so interesting. You were so focused and so, so specific and just bringing up so many really tools that are right underneath all of our noses that I can't thank you enough for this. I think everyone on the webinar is posting similar comments and thanking you. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. Bye-bye.
For more Attitude Podcast and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.